So in today's video, which is for people who have either had a long-term injury, maybe with their arm, which affects the way that they move it, or for people who've had a stroke or have multiple sclerosis or maybe Parkinson's disease, which seems to have affected one arm more than another, or where people have very poor sensory feedback from their hands. So I'm going to do a quick video just to explain about sensory feedback and how that helps in terms of improving movement patterns. So very much like in the legs, that we really want good grounding in our legs and feet to floor, particularly feet and floor, because that dictates how we move and gives us much better balance mechanisms and much better movement. When we're moving with our arms, we're moving from our hands. So it's the hands that should be leading the movement. Now, very often when you've had an injury maybe affecting the shoulder, or when you've had a stroke that's affected sensory feedback, particularly, usually from the hand, that movement pattern tends to change. And quite often that movement is led from the shoulder rather than from the hand. So these are just first few very simple exercises of what you can do to reawaken our awareness of movement from our hands. And I'm stood here at a table. This is a good height for me, so it's finding a surface that for your height is really good, so that you can stand with your elbows just a little bit bent, but firmly on the surface, and I'm not flexing forwards. So I'm upright, I can have really nice stance through my feet. And in actual fact, I'm in barefoot again, because how we move from our feet affects our body and our trunk and our legs, but it also affects how we move from our arms. So whenever you're going to do arm exercises, it's very important that you are aware of your feet and that you're stood in a very nice, even posture, because that will give you the best outcome for movement from your arms. So first thing that I'd like you to do, after you've checked that you've got nice stance and that you're evenly stood through your feet, is that I want you to place your hands down. Now, if your dining room table is too low for you, then kitchen surface is pretty good. Maybe building up surface from here with some large books or something like that. I've used in the past a firm box on top of a table. So whatever works for you, but it's quite important to have a good surface where you can stand at a nice posture. So beginning in much the same way as we do with our feet is just allowing two hands to rest on the surface. Allow yourself to relax. Allow your shoulders, be aware of your shoulders. If you're holding your shoulders up, let's put my hair back a bit so you can see my shoulders a bit more. If you're holding your shoulders up, allow them to drop down. Try and stand a little bit more evenly to the camera. So making sure that your shoulders are even. Have a little move of them, very gently. If you get shoulder pain, then it's important that it's particularly in these initial times that you don't aggravate it. Just allow yourself to move to try and get your shoulders as even as possible. And allow your hands to rest on the surface and relax. And let your arms move a little bit. I'm going to exaggerate it. It's that sort of movement, but on the surface, where you're putting a little bit more weight through your thumb, each finger, and then the little finger. So if you don't have much movement at all in your hands, and if your hand is quite tight, if you've got somebody that can help you to place it down, that's great. If you can't get your hand out flat, then something that you can use is a cushion. cushion and allow it to be a little bit bent, but have a surface for it. So if this is as straight as you can get your fingers, wherever you can have them. But what I want you to do is be paying attention to that hand resting on the surface. The flatter you can get it, the better. But you might need to use a soft surface rather than a firm one in order to get the maximum amount of surface area that your hand can have contact with. A firm surface is better because we're going to be doing a little bit of weight bearing through it. So allowing your hands to rest on the surface. Let's even myself up again. And just rocking from, so you've got your weight on the outer border of your hand, through your fingers to your thumb. If you've not got much movement at all, then what I want you to do is see whether you can get a little bit of a rocking, a little bit of being more aware of the thumb side of your hand, and then a little bit more aware of the little finger side of your hand. So whatever your movement will allow you to do. And in fact, just staying still and allowing your brain to have some time to communicate with both your hands, and then to pay attention to your hand that either is injured, a painful shoulder, or is more affected by perhaps a neurological condition. Just standing and paying attention to that, or sitting if you can't stand, is very, very helpful, because if you think about it, if you're not really moving that arm or not really using it and not getting much feedback from it, your brain is spending very little time communicating with that hand. And changes, and positive changes to movement and recovery, can only happen if we're paying attention to it. So placing that hand down and just spending some time, even if you're not able to move it, just being aware of it. Maybe think about your thumb, and then your index finger, your middle finger, your ring finger, and your little finger. Just be aware of those parts. If you can do it without looking, that's better, because you'll get better sensory feedback from your hands if you don't use your eyes. If you're not getting any sensory feedback, then use your eyes and perhaps your other hand just to touch it. So you're just saying, hello thumb, hello index finger, hello middle finger, hello ring finger, hello little finger. So it's spending that time having a conversation with different parts of your hand. If you have no sensory feedback at all from that hand, it is still worthwhile doing this, because in my view, gaining some kind of sensory feedback from parts of your hand is very much the key to gaining movement and control. And in my experience, people, for example, with a stroke who've had no sensory feedback at all from the whole of the arm, when we're doing this work, you gradually find that often, if you do it often enough, that sensory feedback will travel its way down the arm and gradually reach towards the hand. But we want to lead it from the hand, because it's the hand that normally gives us all the feedback. So, beginning with just becoming aware of your hand, either touching, thinking about each individual finger, that rolling from side to side. Now, if your problem is in your shoulder, you might think, well, why am I doing all this in the hand? And it's to wake up and get a little bit more sensory feedback from that hand, so that your brain communicates with it again. Because often if we've had pain, we will tense up, and we're kind of doing this because we're avoiding moving the shoulder, and that actually impedes any communication with the hand. So you'll see that people will move like this. So in waking up the hand, you're then going to find that you can actually get much better movement throughout the rest of the hand, rest of the shoulder, rest of the arm. So this is our first exercise in this first video, just spending time standing and becoming aware of that hand, and then starting to incorporate a little bit more movement over the surface that you're standing. I'll leave you with that for today, and I'll follow up with some more videos taking the next steps forward. But the more often you can spend time and asking for feedback from a hand which is not necessarily getting much communication with your brain, the better, because that will really help with coordination and movement patterns. Thank you for joining me today.